China's Air Force and Navy have been staging routine military drills off the coast of Taiwan, leading Taiwan's Defense Department to put its forces on high alert. What signals is Beijing trying to send to Taipei and possibly others? And a film documenting the lives of some of the so-called comfort women is fast becoming a success in China. We'll be hearing from one of the people involved in the making of the film and finding out what messages it is trying to give out. Welcome to The Point. Live from Beijing, I'm Lu Xin. A series of routine drills has put Taiwan on high alert. Taiwan's defense authority says its Air Force and Navy will stay on high alert following 3 straight days of drills by Chinese mainland's Air Force. H-6K bombers and advanced fighter jets flew to the east and north of the island of Taiwan through the Bashi Channel, which separates it from the Philippines, and through the Miyako Strait close to Japan. Now, tensions across the Taiwan Strait have been high since the election of Taiwan's leader Tsai Ing-wen, who fails to acknowledge both sides are parts of one China. Beijing has repeatedly warned against Taiwan independence, saying it will never compromise on defending its sovereignty and it would respond with force if Taiwan ever announced a former breakaway. What signal is Beijing trying to send to Taipei and possibly to some others? And what can be done to ease the cross-strait tensions? For more insight, I'm pleased to be joined from Taipei by Joanna Lei, former Taiwan legislator, and in Beijing by Professor Zhong Ho Tao, a researcher of Taiwan studies at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. Welcome to both of you. Joanna, to you first. The PLA has been carrying out these routine air and navy drills since Tsai Ing-wen was elected last May. But these latest rounds of drills have been perceived with particular nervousness. Could you explain the reaction from Taiwan so far?
Well, certainly there are two main schools of thoughts. One is to say this is a show of force by PRC to Taiwan, and that is primarily proposed by the DPP legislators. And they kept saying that this is a show of force and show of warning, and Taiwan need to be careful in terms of how it defends its airspace. On the other hand, there are a lot more international scholars reading this as a way of China breaking the first island chain and showing primarily to United States and Japan in terms of its newly gained power to break both at sea and in air the first island chain. So both schools of thoughts have been widely debated in Taiwan, and of course you can see based on its own ideology, people may take one of the two interpretations.
Professor Zhong, how shall we look at these latest drills? Were they aimed at Taiwan, or was Beijing trying to send a message to some other parties in this part of the world?
Actually, the Chinese mainland did not take Taiwan as its major target for 2 reasons. First, it did not take any live ammunition. Second, it did not enter into the Taiwan's so-called air defense identification zone. So if Chinese mainland indeed took Taiwan as its major target, I think the Chinese mainland would enter into its ADIZ. Still, Chinese mainland is trying to send some strong signals for Taiwan. First, to show Taiwan is a part of China, inalienable part of China. So the Chinese mainland is legitimate and reasonable to fly around Taiwan. The second is that the Chinese mainland is just to admonish those Taiwan independence forces in Taiwan. They just want to let them know they should abandon any illusion of Taiwan independence. The third point, just as Joanna said, the Chinese mainland try to show signals to both United States and Japan that the Chinese mainland has sufficient capability to break the first island chain.
Joanna, how do people look at the kind of unprecedented route of these fighter jets? For instance, they not only flew through the Taiwan Strait, but actually they flew to the other side of Taiwan, to the east and north of Taiwan. What is that? How is that interpreted on the island?
Well, certainly these 8 consecutive flight paths have passed through most of the ADIZ of Taiwan, like Professor Zhong mentioned. So the Air Force have done its proper protocol in terms of responding to ADIZ rules. Most of the people do believe that this shows Taiwan cannot rely purely on the United States and Japan in terms of supporting Taiwan from the Pacific, because that will be the east of Taiwan. On the other hand, Taiwan needs to have its own defense plan properly crafted and probably well reviewed in terms of facing the new weaponry, such as KJ, the Kongjing 200, which indicates the new acquired next generation airborne early warning and control plane. These are new weaponries which weren't in the map in the past. So there are a lot of military experts looking at how to revise the defense plan in terms of facing the new weapons demonstrated by mainland China.
Professor Zhong, what do you think are the messages Beijing is trying to send to Washington, D.C. and to Tokyo by ordering these, by such drilled routes and also by deploying the KJ-200 plane that Joanna was talking about?
Actually, I think the Chinese mainland has sent strong signals to both Washington and Tokyo for two reasons. The first is that the Chinese mainland has capability to break the first island chain. The second is that they should stop the illusion of help Taiwan in case of the fire or war between the two sides. As for the KJ-200, I think KJ-100, as its name showed, it is a kind of early warning aircraft. So it could, and the radar system in this aircraft is very powerful. It could detect almost anything within 1,000 to 3,000 kilometers. So it could provide enough time for those bombers or jet fighters to be highly prepared. And the second is that the KJ-200 is a kind of command office. That means it should send strong signals to other bombers or to other jet fighters, so it could control those other aircrafts. Another point is that KJ-200 is not the most advanced early warning aircraft in Chinese mainland. I think maybe sometime in future the Chinese mainland will send some KJ-2000. I think, which is much more advanced.
Joanna, the Chinese Defense Ministry has actually said that there will be more such drills in the future. So get used to it, you know, to the military and to the authority in Taiwan. How has this gone down within the leadership and the public?
Well, certainly get used to it. That message came down loud and clear, because both the airline, the aircraft carrier, and all these distant exercise drills by the advanced weaponry have shown very clear to Taiwan people that mainland China has upgraded its military defense capabilities, and Taiwan has to be prepared to face a new improved quote-unquote PLA. And that is to say, if Taiwan chose to go through the independence route. So I think the message actually came loud and clear. On the other hand, Taiwan also gained very valuable lessons in terms of how to exercise its proper protocol during the drill of the PLA fighter planes in terms of ADIZ and how we properly identify each other. So there are a lot of very interesting exchanges across Taiwan Straits, and those are potentially ways for us to better understand each other so that we don't inadvertently trigger any potential damage.
Now, Tsai Ing-wen also expressed confidence that the island can protect itself during a visit to an Air Force base in southern Taiwan. What gave her the confidence? It seems to be the fact that the U.S. has approved the sale of $1.4 billion arms package to the island. Is her confidence warranted? Could the package alter the military balance of power across the strait? Joanna.
Well, I certainly believe that in terms of capabilities, now it's extremely asymmetrical. So Taiwan has to revise its own defense plan and also actually have to review its own defense plan. In terms of readiness, I think there is a recent setback by Tsai Ing-wen administration because they've asked the United States to sell us F-35, which will upgrade our Air Force defense capability that particular plea was formally shut down by the Monterey talk. So there has not been any promise in terms of advanced weaponry. So Taiwan has to look within to see its own capability to defend itself in case of unfortunate events.
Yeah, Professor Zhong, now President Xi has vowed to fiercely protect China's sovereignty against any people, organization or political party on the celebration of the 90th anniversary of the founding of the PLA. Now the mainland's firm stance against separatism demonstrates that it is determined to achieve reunification with Taiwan. What has prompted the mainland to increase its pressure on Taiwan?
The main reason is that Tsai Ing-wen refused to accept 1992 consensus, so the official dialogue between the two sides has been suspended. So the Chinese mainland has to exert more pressure on Tsai Ing-wen. So actually, that is one of the reasons why Chinese mainland the jet fighter flew around Taiwan, and that's also why Chinese President Xi Jinping vows the 6 Annies.
And Joanna, how has the administration or the media and the public been reacting to the stepped up pressure from Beijing on the Tsai Ing-wen authority?
Well, there has been a lot of new rhetoric by especially Tsai Ing-wen and Tsai's general administration. They asked for mainland China to look at new model for cross-strait relations. And let me just add, Taiwan has repeatedly said she could maintain status quo with mainland China, and to most of the people on the island, status quo means peace. However, Tsai Ing-wen to date has not demonstrated any ability to have direct dialogue with PRC, and therefore people have lots of doubts in terms of her promise to maintain status quo.
Yeah, you mentioned this new model of cross-strait relations. Exactly, she mentioned that last week during a Asia-Pacific security dialogue. What exactly did she mean by this new model, and do you see it as a gesture of goodwill or just empty talk, as Tsai avoided mention or recognizing the One China principle?
Well, in cross-strait relations, there are bottom lines and red lines and very clear rules and boundary conditions. Mainland China have asked Tsai Ing-wen to address the issue of 92 consensus, which boils down to, do you recognize One China policy or One China? Tsai Ing-wen tries to circumvent this particular question and trying to establish a more international law-based relationship across Taiwan Straits. But let me add, last time Taiwan and mainland China changed status quo was actually during 2005 and 2008. We moved away from stated hostility to stated peace. And that was because both sides showed respect, shows goodwill, and have careful negotiation. So maintenance of status quo or changing status quo take a lot of mutual respect. Tsai Ing-wen, if she cannot restore that mutual respect, there is almost no room for her to engage in any negotiation with mainland China, and therefore there will not be a new equilibrium, which is what she termed as the new model.
Finally, Professor Zhong, very briefly, the mainland will hold its 19th National Congress of the Communist Party of China later this year, and the once every 5-year Congress will likely usher in a new strategy for the government, including its policy concerning Taiwan. What has to happen before cross-strait relationship could warm up?
If the cross-strait relationship has to be warmed up, the Tsai Ing-wen should adopt or accept 1992 consensus. That's the only way. Otherwise, the cross-strait will continue to be in stalemate.
Yeah, so get used to these routine military drills unless you change your mind. Many thanks to our guests, Joanna Lei, former Taiwan legislator, and Professor Zhong Ho-Tao, a researcher of Taiwan studies at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. And you have been watching The Point with me, Liu Xin. We'll take a short break and we'll be back right after this. It is estimated that at least 200,000 Chinese women were forced into sex slavery by Japanese invaders during World War II. Now, over 70 years later, a documentary director has located some of those women and filmed them going about their daily lives over a period of 3 years. 22 was the name of the documentary, meaning the number of so-called comfort women alive at the time of its filming in 2014. As of this month, only 8 are still alive. It's not the first time that these women are documented, yet this particular film has attracted great attention because of the unconventional way in which the subject is treated. What message does the filmmaker wanted to send? Does the film tell us something new about the subject, which has been talked about so much? Joining me in the studio are Long Qing, a volunteer who worked on the film for 3 years, and Han Hua, fellow of Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies at Renmin University. But before we start the discussion, let's take a look at this background report.
The 90-minute film details the women's daily lives, their everyday happiness and sorrows. Without too much drama or disturbing images, the film tells the story of these comfort women from a more personal and humanistic perspective. In Hubei province, Korean woman Mao Yin-mei has been living in China for more than 70 years. After leaving the comfort women camp, she remained in the country. Now her daily life includes watching her great-grandchildren playing video games while sitting outside.
I want to let people know what these women's lives look like today. The goal is not to dig out the misery, but instead show the reality of them today. If they are at peace today, then I believe there must be something powerful in that peace.
22 is Guo Ke's second film on comfort women. It was inspired by his documentary short 32 that was released in 2012. Back in 2012, there were 32 former comfort women left alive in China. However, by 2014, only 22 remained, and their numbers continue to dwindle.
Let's start the discussion. Indeed, a very touching subject. Long Qing, it's great dedication that you have put into making this film. For 3 years, you followed it with no pay, the only one in the crew. What made you do that, and how has it changed you?
Because the director, Guo Ke, was my student 22 years ago. When he asked me if I would like to participate in the film, I answered him, yes, of course.
Why?
Because I know he was doing embarking.
He was doing something very important.
Yes.
And you wanted to be part of that.
It is my responsibility to help him.
Why do you think it was your responsibility?
I am his teacher. He met some difficulties.
What kind of difficulties did he have?
He has no money. And I am a lady. I think it's a good condition for me to get close to the old ladies.
So you helped him approach these ladies, and
Yeah.
A very important thing I think he tried to avoid is to poke into the scars of these women, right, and make them remember those horrible memories. What did you observe were the sensitivity that the team has shown when they were, interacting with these ladies?
First of all, I think we should set up a very close relations with the old ladies because they don't want to speak out what they have experienced in the past years. It is hard for them. In China, raped women always be looked upon.
Raped women.
Yeah,
yes.
raped women.
So they suffered a lot. How did the team manage to respect them as much as possible, but still manage to make a film out of it? Because you need to have some story, right? You need to have some conflict and some pain, maybe some tears, for the movie to be catching.
It is hard for Chinese people to speak out the word comfort women. So, but if you get closer to them, you will find there is no any difference between them and the other old women. They just like our sisters, our mothers, or our grandmothers. as the director said, I only want to record their real life during their remaining time.
Actually, there are some people who are saying, why didn't you make it more dramatic? You know, for instance, there must be a lot of hatred, so they wanted to hear these women angry, but actually he refused to do that, right? He just wanted to record them as they are. Why did he?
Yeah,
why did he do
the
that?
director set up the machine in the far distance, just observe the ladies with respect. Just record their, such as they did their housework, they sing their songs, they raise the cats, something like that.
Why
like
did he?
a living history.
Yes.
Yeah, but why did he want to do it this way? Why didn't he want to make
They
it more
need
dramatic?
their own ordinary life, I think.
This is their true life.
Yeah, this is a true life.
This is what he wanted to say. Yeah, Han Hua, this film has become a phenomenon, right? In 3 days,
yeah.
40 million yuan, that is $6 million US dollars, the box office. How do you look at it?
Despite the screening arrangement at such a so low rate, like
What has prompted
only
this film?
1% to 4% till today, but the
Sure.
box office has done so much, far exceeding, the expectations.
What are the reasons?
In my opinion, I think just like the living history, this director, I think he first positioned himself not only a director, but also a family member of these suffering women. This is his positioning, which I appreciated very much. And I think under these circumstances, he used a very different perspective, a very unique angle to tape and record these suffering women's ordinary life. Try to give our generation, or maybe the next generation, a vivid account or record of how they can comfort women during the war times, how they can also be the ordinary wives, mothers, or grandmothers in the peacetime. I think so. Let us to do something to first. We do not forget. We do not forget their sufferings from the wartime, but we also need to appreciate how peacefulness they can enjoy during the peacetime. Also, we
But some
should
people are
not
saying-
hold the hatred forever.
Exactly. Some people are saying, isn't this a bit too much love? I mean, these people suffered so much during wartime.
Yes.
What is wrong with having more, emotions, more reactions when we're talking about these people who survived these
Yes.
crimes?
There have been so many, records or accounts of their sufferings, of their scars, as you pointed out. I think we nowadays, we have the luxury, or we should have the room, to house, to give them to a broader heart, to house their ordinary life, to give them some peace of time, especially during their remaining years of their lives.
Absolutely. But on the other hand, let's zoom out to the great picture. I mean, the last surviving Chinese woman to have sued the Japanese government
Yes.
actually died just last Saturday, and
Yes.
they failed to get any official apology or any compensation from the Japanese
Right.
government for numerous reasons. So what is the importance, you think, of recording, these atrocities and recording the lives of these survivors as they pass away one by one?
This means that we should never forget about this special, very suffering period during the Chinese history. This is the dark period of our time. So it should remind us that how precious the peacefulness is, and also we should take, the rational steps moving forward, be it to rationalize the Sino-Japanese relations, be it to have the government or the private sectors to do more to support the same group of people.
Yeah, however, it
continuously.
is agonizing to see that actually on the Japanese side, there is still little hope that any of these remaining comfort women might get any compensation while they're alive. I mean, the Japanese government has time on their hand to play the waiting game. What is your response to that?
I would say yes, because this is against the backdrop or the grand picture of the Sino-Japanese relationships. We always say that this bilateral relationship should be based on, the two sides can face the history with a right perspective. But unfortunately, the Japanese side cannot face the history rightly. So this has some, like you said, little room, little time from the Japanese side.
Do you think
but we still have means to do that, not
Yeah.
only from the government side, but also from the private sectors.
Ms. Long, what do you think this film has changed a little bit in the Chinese people's perception, let's say, of comfort women? Has it changed a little bit?
Yes, I think from the movie, you can see all of them are lovely and peacefully. They are not so scary. They are not so scary. All the women has been unfairly treated for so many years. But they also give us very good attitude to us. Women eat together, chat together, even sleep on the bed sometimes. So I always touched by them.
Very touched by these people. Yeah, and Hanhua, very briefly, how do you think this film could impact the kind of perception by the Japanese people, especially the younger generation of Japanese people, about their wartime history? Could it make a difference, you think?
I'm not so sure because I have no idea of the data of the overseas distribution. But from the box office, we have till today that we can see, the positive side, because it really gains the attention, and also the young generation are taking more, focus on, how do we need to perceive the past history in a more rational way.
Thank you very much, ladies, and I hope that such efforts will continue in the future. And many thanks, Hanhua, for your analysis as well. That was Long Qing, a volunteer who worked on the documentary film 22, and Hanhua, fellow of the Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies at Renmin University. And here is my last point. The film had difficulty actually raising funds at start. The director had to borrow money from his friends and raise funds through crowdsourcing on the internet. Some 32,000 people responded quickly, making the film possible. Now, the director was under pressure to make the film more dramatic, but he resisted, even at the risk of financial failure. Surprised, the film has been an instant success, both in terms of box office receipts and viewer ratings. It is encouraging that this film has been so well received, in China at least, and I see it as a tribute from the Chinese public to these survivors. Although there is little hope of the remaining survivors receiving any apology or compensation from the Japanese government in the near future, their stories can live on through the efforts of such filmmakers. That's all from this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, you can follow us on Twitter or visit our Facebook page using the handle The Point with Alex. Download the application called CGTN Live to watch our show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. You've got the point.